you come from an atheistic worldview.
Yes.
Or do you?
It's an interesting one because atheism essentially means the lack of a theology. That doesn't mean that there's a lack of a morality or a lack of a principled way to live. And I think that's where people often make the mistake that if you don't have a theological structure, therefore you've got nothing. There are other ways of conceiving of the world other than through a religious or theological approach. Here we are on this planet, this is the condition that we're in. What can we say about the way that we ought to live with each other and how best to get along and to, as it were, maximise the experience of being alive for as many people as possible? What is it that we are all worried about, aspire to, fear, what makes us all happy? That's the start point for me.
So does that mean you're an atheist? Part of your answer the other day when we were talking about this is that it's more accurate to call you a humanist.
Yes. From my point of view, humanism means improving the human condition of everybody on the planet. Life that we experience here, which is a really good life, compared to people in previous points in history, compared to most of the other people on the planet. What is it about our life that makes it good? What makes it good is that we're free to think, we're free to move, we are able to have friends, our basic needs are met, all of those kinds of things. So suffering, what we call suffering, is nothing compared to what people in other parts of the world may be undergoing because they're in war or because the climate isn't very good or a multitude of reasons, the political systems, whatever.
And that's without reference to God or gods?
No, because that's our experience. We are here, we're at the centre, and it's our day-to-day existence that I think is the only thing that we can actually manage, have control over, can make a difference for other people as well. So part of my world view is to think, what can I do to improve the condition of other people?
There's a common misconception that atheists are amoral or immoral beings. Now, it is true that they don't have a kind of ultimate moral viewpoint in a sort of revealed deity.
No, it's not. There's no. Revelation is one way of coming to an understanding of what the world is. From my point of view and the way that I work, it's reason. What is the reasoning behind how we should do things? Regardless of whether they believe in a theocracy or not, the reasoning works for everybody. And I think humanism includes people who believe in God as well as people who don't. So It's not a purely atheistic way of looking. Because
but it is human-centred, whereas a kind of classic theistic worldview, whether it's Islam, Christianity or Judaism, they would put God as a central being. So it would be kind of whatever God wants, whatever God dictates, whatever God defines.
In practice, what is it that people of religion and people who are non-religious but still pertain to some kind of moral view, what is it that they're all trying to achieve? And that, I think, from my understanding, is that they want to alleviate suffering as far as possible. And I think that you can arrive at that through reason without having the need to have a God there.
A curious thing here is that you were brought up as a Sikh.
Yeah. Well, okay, I was born and brought up in a Sikh family, so
and you'd make a difference between cultural Sikhs and practicing Sikhs?
Yes, I would define that the household I was brought up with was very much a cultural Sikh background. The question never arose in my background of whether you believe in God or not. It wasn't.
Yeah.
You just did certain things, like you went to the Gurdwara, which I did probably 2 or 3 times a week as a small child with my grandmother, and I really enjoyed going.
And from that, you kind of you have inherited a quite an interesting moral framework.
I think so.
Which is partly based on practice by things like the langar, the kitchens that the hospitality in the Gurdwara. Is that right?
Yeah, so if you look at Gurdwaras, they all have an extensive kitchen and langar. So the idea is that you do seva, you serve other people, and regardless of what religious background they have, and obviously for India it was very important, and one of the reasons that the Sikh religion came into being was to try and remove the caste system that was very much present and still is, unfortunately, in the Hindu system of doing things.
Sure.
It was the idea of equality, not just through caste, but also between the sexes. So,
because at the time of Guru Nanak, there was a lot of tension, wasn't there, between Muslims and Hindus?
There was, and by the time of the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, that really came to the fore, which is why we have the 5 symbols that the Sikhs carry, and that was to demarcate them as being different, and the idea of there being unity and equality was very much core to that.
So at the moment, you're not Sikh anymore.
That's an interesting one. So when I go home to my mum and dad's house in Coventry, I often will go to the Gurdwara because that's what you just do.
Yeah.
The question, it's more like the cultural practice. So we go to the Gurdwara, I take my children to the Gurdwara, and it's quite an interesting insight for them as a cultural experience. The question of whether God is involved is not really part of the equation for me at all. I don't feel a need to have a resolution after this life. As far as I know, this is what there is, and we've got to do the best that we can now.
So YOLO?
Well, as far as I know.
You know, a classic kind of idea with that is that, oh no, that's all I've got, better not squander it, better make the most of it. Is that a fair representation of how you feel?
Squandering it.
Although your idea of making the most of it would be to make the most for the rest of humanity.
Yeah, very much so. We invariably can't help but care about other people. We have a gut instinct when we see other people in pain and suffering. We feel like we want to do something, and taking that feeling and translating it into reason and then action that has a positive result. I don't think that is just, making the best of it. I think that is actively doing things to a particular end. Quite frankly, we got to be born in a really good time in history, in an amazing place. And I could think it is morally incumbent upon all of us to do something with that.
I got one question that has come to mind.
Go on then.
I think one of the important elements of true tolerance is that you value difference, but also that you understand someone's perspective from within their own traditions.
Okay.
What is it to stand in the shoes of a humanist?
To stand in the shoes of a humanist is to see those qualities in every human being that don't mark out our differences, but instead show our unity, show in the ways that we are similar or the same. And I think that if we really focused on those a lot more, rather than thinking, in what way am I different from my neighbour, I think we'd all get along a bit better.
Do you think there's hope?
There's always hope. What we consider acceptable behaviour and the way we treat each other has really changed. We thought slavery was okay in the time of the Greeks. We thought it was okay to discriminate against sexes or people from different backgrounds. I think we're at that point where we cannot, in all good conscience, do that with each other. And that's amazing. That's a really positive state to be in.
We're probably done, right? Thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure.